We are a team. As storytellers and dreamers,
there is always magic to discover.
Once upon a time,
a Las Vegas showgirl
and a comedian magician
figured out that even with different perspectives,
our adventures and experiences together
are really just
one
big caper.
So this topic evolved from getting peed on by cats in magic boxes.
The previous episode was about sexism in the
entertainment
industry. And you can probably tell that we both have much more to say on that subject, but that makes this episode a nice segued opportunity for us to express a little bit more that's on a related issue. Yeah.
It's definitely related. I think that the exploitation is happening because of the fact that sexism or ageism exists in entertainment. Like I mentioned in the previous episode, there was an article that came out in, I think it was 2006. No, that was before Me Too. Okay, so it must have been 2019 or 20. And it was 27 women that had spoken out against sexism in the film industry. One was particularly appalling to me was when Maggie Gyllenhaal, and she spoke out about this at the age of 37, so she was 5 years younger than I am now, was not chosen for a part to play opposite of a 55-year-old male love interest. And she was too old. That's the reason that was given. She was too old to play that opposite. And it's really unfortunate. You brought it up a little bit, but the production of shows is to a broader audience that you were saying in the last episode. So
who has the most buying power in this culture? Just as an aside, but an interesting bit of trivia that takes a moment for you to kind of wrap your head around, but you get it once you do, and that is that the highest, how do I put this? The most spending power one demographic in our country has belongs to young women ages 12 to 18.
yeah.
They have the most control over purchasing power and thereby decisions that companies make when they produce a product.
Okay, so why would she have been too old to play a love interest for a 55-year-old man? That's 18-year difference. 18 years.
Yeah.
And she's too old.
That's crazy, yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's ridiculous. I get it. I understand that people have this idea of beauty being younger and more fit, maybe lighter skinned. There's this idea of beauty that has been drilled into us. And I'm happy to see more and more ads, specifically on Pinterest, because that's where I spend my time when trying to be inspired, or just, I also do Pinterest marketing, so I spend a lot of time on Pinterest. But they actually created a code for creators to prohibit that toxic idea of body image. So they're no longer allowed to shame people for not working out or having a better nutritional life or things like that. So that was actually a code you had to agree to continue to be a creator on Pinterest.
Sorry.
It just was tickling my arm. We have a bug problem. These little gnats, I don't know. They're awful. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is because there is and has been an ideal of beauty in the media. Yeah. And it used to be decided by whoever was in power, and at the time was a white male or white males in power. Playboy magazine, for example. Though I will say Playboy did jump on the wagon of of the civil rights movement, and they did have their first.
That's
black
a different
claimant.
issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole different issue. I'm just bringing this up just to kind of set the stage for kind of the expectations of women, because I think that those expectations then get exploited. That's like the whole reason I'm setting that up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It occurs to me immediately that this is a larger conversation than we have time for, because things that I have to offer as observations or prompts for further discussion or whatever are directly related, but can inspire a different conversation altogether.
Dang.
And I suspect that people who join us for this they'll have their own things to say. And
Yeah.
they're absolutely invited to
Please.
do that. And for that matter, share with each other. If you are not being kind to each other in these interactions, I don't want to have to police that. I'm not going to police that. So be kind to each other, for goodness sake.
We're going to need a community manager.
Please be kind to each other. Yeah, it's not that we don't just have time to police interactions. We shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to do that. So if you're not being kind, then we'll just eliminate that. So thanks for being lovely
Thanks
to
in
each
advance.
other. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's steer this back towards the exploitation of showgirls.
Exploitation of showgirls.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
you can
Which-
certainly be an authority on that
Yes.
subject. Yes.
Yes. So, I mean, a partial authority. I never felt exploited.
I also can observe and recognize that you're an era of the showgirls. So one of the things that we've really discovered in your work as a preservationist and historian is that
There are generations.
behavioral
Yeah.
differences in eras are certainly a thing and worth considering.
I don't know that it's an era. I think it's a generation. But it kind of goes alongside the generations that were happening. Yeah. So the Las Vegas Showgirls came from Bluebells, the Bluebell dancers. And this is the juicy bit of the episode.
Juicy, but
Juicy bit. Time for the juicy bit. It was expected by the girls in the shows prior to Bluebell's arrival that they would mingle with the guests in the casinos after the shows. And this was set up, of course, by who started the whole thing of producing shows in the desert at these casinos, the mob. Mm-hmm. And yes, I think that there was some exploitation happening. And some of those women, prior to the real Las Vegas Showgirl shows that started in 1958, prior to that, women were expected to mingle. And some of them took advantage of this and
became entrepreneurs.
They added a little side hustle. So there is truth to that idea that some women, showgirls were prostitutes.
I don't even think that, those people who were exceptions to certain rules or had flexible morality.
That's a good way to put it. Flexible morality. Yes.
They're opportunists too, I suppose.
Yes.
But I don't think it was those people who gave showgirls a bad name. I think it was this falsely puritanical society that has drilled into each other's heads that nudity is immoral, or is
Public nudity.
But yeah, public nudity. So I don't think that it was individuals who gave showgirls that scary perception.
That stigma, yeah.
That, stigma is a
Okay,
perfect word.
yeah.
I think it was the silly, falsely puritanical, and
Yeah.
I can give you so many. Just such a long description of why that psychology works, how it works, when it started, and it was patriarchal in nature. It was designed to manipulate.
Yes.
But
And I'm reading The Witches right now.
oh, you're reading
I'm
a
reading
book about
the Salem witch trials.
Right.
1692. Yeah.
which is
It's fascinating.
it's nonfiction. It's fictional nonfiction.
I think it's historical fiction, yes.
Okay.
But the woman, and I can't think of her name, she wrote a book, Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
It's deeply researched, probably years of research to create this book, and it's huge. Anyway, I'm reading that and thinking that women have been oppressed for many years, millennia, and then exploited through that oppression. And I think a lot of people think showgirls are also like that. They're exploited. Their bodies, they were exploited for their bodies and their beauty. Which I guess you can say yes, because
Sure.
there was, here's another juicy bit, a woman I worked with. She was at the Crazy Horse in Paris, and she was fired for being too old to be a showgirl on that stage. She was 27 years old. And she went on to sue the Crazy Horse, and she won.
Yes.
For ageism. And she later became a big name in Las Vegas as a showgirl. And then I met her when she came for her last dancing contract at Jubilee. So I hope to get her on my show someday.
Oh, she'll do the show, I'm sure.
I hope. But that's just another form of the exploitation of women. There's a certain age that you're allowed to show your body, to be exhibited in such a way. And even when we went to Paris, I went to the ballet mistress after the Showgirl masterclass, and I said, "Am I too old to be on the stage?" And she said, "How old are you?" And I said, 40. And she was like, I have, I think, more sex appeal than any of those girls put together, because I am an older woman. And that's why I love Linda Green so much, because she had that older woman,
There
that
is
maturity about
the
her. So,
understanding instinct to some degree. There's a reason that we find youth attractive, and that's purely instinctive. I have so much to say on this subject, and I have to.
I think that you should not be afraid to speak. I think that it's pretty clear you're a feminist. I know you are a white male.
I am a cis white male, but I am the father of one natural daughter, the adopted father of several other young amazing women, and
brown babies too.
And I have the two young ladies and you in my life, who all live in my home, and I'm
Our
the
home.
son of a mother, and it is our home, of course. It's mostly the sorority. I am a feminist. At my heart and my core, I'm a feminist, and that comes from my relationship with women through my whole life. I mean, even most of my friends over the years have been women.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm a feminist, and I wouldn't argue with any of these things. There are certain things that I recognize that could be arguments. For instance, somebody be exploited for their body is exploitation defined by exhibition. Is it nulled by compensation?
Or consent.
Well, so showgirls were giving consent to
Yeah.
being exploited, right?
Right. We did sign a
So
contract.
is it exploitation at that point?
Right. I didn't, like I said, I didn't feel exploited
Right.
because it was a choice. I could sign that contract or not. The only duress that you never sign a contract under duress. The only duress there was is you don't have a job. If you're not willing to be a nude dancer, and I have a whole video about it. What is a nude dancer in a showgirl show? Then you don't dance in this show. You dance somewhere else. That's
the same
not,
thing
to
that,
me,
you know,
it's
if-
not selling out.
If
it's
you
not
don't like the
exploitation.
content we are producing, change the channel. It's very
Yeah.
easy to do that. Easier
Yeah.
now more than
Than
ever
ever.
before.
True. I think before corporate came and took over Las Vegas, ruined Las Vegas. Though some of the girls were exploited. And episode 6, Nikki Adamo of a Showgirls Life, episode 6, she talked about how Frank Rosenthal, who was running the Stardust at the time, threatened her job if she wouldn't go mingle with the customers. And I've also heard another friend who was in that same show at the same time and signed the same contract said, no, it was actually in our contract that it wasn't required. So I think he was just trying to scare her. Using
That's his thing, though,
power.
it was his thing. Like, he was throw his
Yes.
weight around. I know
That's
people kind of
exactly, and that's how he got his way in most situations, except for his wife, unfortunately.
If you're unfamiliar with the name, there's a movie called Casino. And from what I've learned from people who
We're living that life.
not only that, but
Work
were
with
in
him?
the film.
Yeah. Yes.
They often tout how accurate that portrayal is.
Yep. And you know, there's a scene where of Showgirl, clearly she's about a foot taller than Joe Pesci, walks to the car.
Perfect casting, right?
Yeah. Walks to the car with Joe Pesci and proceeds to, yeah. So it did happen. It was happening. But then corporate came in, and I was there when corporate was taking over, and we had sexual harassment meetings and things like that. So
Yeah,
it was very different.
Yeah, HR came in
Yeah,
and had to,
yeah. Yeah, we're going to corral all the naked people.
It was also major pay cuts across the board too, right? As part of that process.
Yeah, I think that it happened that pay started to dwindle once the 40-hour 9-to-5ers found out how much dancers were making, dancers in the show were making. They started like cutting things for us. So a little bit of jealousy there, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah, but I never felt exploited. But I do want to bring up the point that if you've been paying attention, you've been listening, I am a very woo-centric person, and I do pay attention to energy. And like Albert Einstein says, it's, you know, everything is energy. It's not physics. Or it's not whatever he said, spirituality, it's physics, it's science. That's a famous quote of Albert Einstein. And so I pay attention to energy, and I see, and this is one of the reasons I had to leave Instagram, social media, was because I wasn't willing to just throw up pictures of me half naked in suggestive poses, which to me is an exploitation of our female form. And this is another reason why burlesque wasn't really something for me either, is because I felt burlesque was crossing the line of appreciating the female form in more into a darker side of that.
Body sexualization.
Yes, the sexualization is...
Body with a W. B-A-W.
Body. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, and the sexualization, and then I don't care if you're a male, female, or what you're into. When you're trying to elicit lust, to me, that's an exploitation of energy and the power of the female.
I see the appeal and the empowerment that the people in burlesque
the
experience
yes.
and enjoy. And I can speak with a fair amount of experience and authority on that subject, and I know that that's not what we're talking about. But there is, this is one of the hot button subjects or topics that comes up for us is the difference between burlesque and showgirls and the difficulty that we experience in trying to describe that to somebody who is unfamiliar with either or both.
Yeah. And even in the showgirl world, there were women that were willing to exchange for things.
So is exploitation...
Yeah.
Is it permission based? I mean, there's a lot of gray areas because is Morgan Freeman exploited for his voice?
He has a good voice. He
It's
really,
copied.
like, it is.
It's mimicked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that exploitation?
That's a good question. I have not looked up the definition of exploitation. So.
Well, it's.
This is all
I think it's easy to
opinion-based anyway.
communicate, and for people to understand where we were coming from with addressing this issue.
Yeah.
And it is an issue, but I think it's a matter of perception as much as other things.
And and everybody's perception is different because they only come from their lived experiences.
Maybe we should continue this as kind of a series, because I can think of another subject that is totally related,
Okay.
but would require maybe its own episode. And that subject is something we've dealt with as producers of a show.
Uh-huh.
And and certainly part of your background as a showgirl, when you develop standards for casting,
Uh-huh.
you're not being inclusive.
Oh, yeah.
And that becomes a major issue for a lot of people who believe
Right.
that they should be included,
Okay.
Despite their differences in physicality. And I'm of the thought that there are reasons for casting decisions and seeing a vision through, but I'm also of the era where I find entertainment like the Rockettes very entertaining and fascinating because of the uniformity and almost the illusion that builds.
It is an illusion.
And to disrupt that line would ruin the illusion. So I think that could be an interesting episode if you're okay with that.
Yeah, we can do diversity and inclusivity. I think it's on the list. Just didn't think
Oh,
it
good.
would come
Okay.
up so soon.
Good.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of a natural, because that's where my brain is going right now. I'm thinking about those experiences that we've had that cause people to be a little upset with us for casting based on a certain type of person.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can talk about it. I didn't realize that I didn't fully do the juicy bit.
Oh, so it's a two-parter.
I started and then you jumped in.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be over here.
So, as I said earlier, Las Vegas Showgirls were expected to hang out with the patrons of the casino after the shows. That was just part of their job. They weren't paid extra for it. It was just an expectation. And in 1958, now the only reason I know this is true is because a friend of mine used to listen in the smoker's corner when Fluff Laco would hold court and tell her stories. She arrived in Las Vegas in 1947. So she saw the changes from the very beginning till she passed in 15. So that was verified that it was expected, but one thing Fluff said was there was no funny business, at least in Fluff's experience, okay? Then fast forward to 1958 when Don Arden and Frank Sens brought the Lido de Paris to Las Vegas. They brought all of the girls and the costumes and the sets from Paris to Las Vegas, and they put on the first Lido de Paris, the first installment. And that was when they brought the Bluebells, the world famous Bluebells. And of course, the mob thought that they could continue that tradition of having the girls hang out after, because these women were beyond what had been in Las Vegas for the last 20 years. Wait, what did I say? 10 years. 10, 15 years. These girls were tall, leggy, graceful, beautiful women, like extraordinarily beautiful women. And so the mob's like, great, more beautiful women. And they're French, they're exotic. This is awesome. They need to come and hang out with the patrons in the casino. Patrons at the time, of course, were friends of the mob, too.
Or tourists, but mostly the former.
Mostly, yes. And Miss Bluebell said, absolutely not. My girls do not fraternize. If this is a requirement of the contract, I will take them home.
Good.
And so Miss Bluebell, back in 1958, stood up for women and the exploitation of the women and said, no, we're not doing this anymore. Mm-hmm. And in her book, Bluebell by George Sherman, they say she was actually bluffing. She did not have the money to take all of her girls home. I think there were 14 or 16 Bluebells. She didn't have the money to fly all those girls home. And so she just hoped they called her bluff. And they said, okay. Mm-hmm. The Bluebells do not have to fraternize. So it still happened with the Showgirls, which if you have been listening to Showgirls Life podcast, you'll find out there is a difference between a showgirl, a bluebell dancer, and a dancing nude. And I've done episode 50, for example, illustrates all of that. But I am grateful for women like Madame Bluebell who stood up for women when we did not think we had a strong enough voice to do so. So, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool place to leave it because I like to leave it on a positive and hopeful note.
Yeah. I mean, exploitation is still happening, but yeah.
Yes.
Take it for what.
But there are heroes among us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening and watching.
We'll be back again and probably with another hot button topic.
It seems to be growing towards that.
We can't keep doing this without you. Give us just a little bit of your time by subscribing, sharing, rating, or talking about One Big Caper with someone else. We truly appreciate your support.
We want to hear your stories. Visit onebigcaper.com to get to know us even more.
This episode of One Big Caper was published in 2022. All rights to broadcast in whole or in part are the property of Gazellus Productions, LLC.